I was 9 years old and I was practicing my apology. My best friend had thrown a sleepover. All of us were going, the whole group. And everyone was excited. And then my mother said no. She gave me no explanation that satisfied me. She just said no. See, my mother, she's a Nigerian prayer warrior, so she prayed as if she was fighting a war. So when she said no, the conversation was over. So while my friends were at this sleepover, I was at home, mortified, rehearsing what I would say on Monday. I even had a plan. I'll bring some chocolates, peanut M&Ms to be specific, because at 9, there isn't much you can do, but an apology chocolate seemed appropriate. Because I didn't show up, because I'd let her down, because I was convinced that I was a bad friend. I never got to give it to her. By Monday morning, we learned that a fire had broken out at the house where the sleepover had taken place. 4 children didn't make it out. My best friend was one of them. And I stood there at 9 years old, holding chocolates I'd bought to apologize, not realizing that not being there had saved my life. I've been thinking about that little girl ever since. The one who was so afraid of being seen as a bad friend that she didn't realize what her absence actually was. I've realized something in the years since. We were never taught that friendships could have seasons. We were only ever taught to apologize for them. So today, I want to ask you a question. Are you a bad friend, or are you in a season that looks like absence? See, that little girl grew up and she learned the rules. And chances are, so did you. Think about the community you grew up in. Whatever it looked like, the messaging was probably the same. You show up for the people around you. You pour into the people around you. You carry, you give, because that's your character. That's who you are. And honestly, for me and my friends, friendships never felt like an obligation growing up. They just kind of flowed. Nobody was keeping score. Most of my friends I've known for over a decade, not because we worked at it, we really didn't, but because we're simply present with each other. But then life got bigger. The career got serious. The responsibilities started stacking up, and somewhere in that transition, for a lot of us, the pouring starts being joyful. It starts feeling compulsive, reactive even. Think about Q4, the busiest quarter and the most brutal quarter of the corporate calendar. Clients are calling, strategic meetings are being missed. You are drowning. And in the middle of that drowning, someone you love needs you. I know that feeling. I remember I took a friend to Greece for her 30th birthday, all expense paid, because her friends locally hadn't shown up. Look, maybe they were in their own seasons too, but because she deserved to be celebrated. And I couldn't stand the thought of her feeling forgotten. So I did what any good friend would do. I sat on that 11-hour flight from Los Angeles to Greece, thinking about everything I was leaving behind. I showed up. I poured. I even made it beautiful for her. And if truth be told, I wasn't really there. Not really. And for some of us, this goes deeper than a corporate calendar. I grew up in a culture where community wasn't a choice. It was simply what you did. Where the door was always open. Where you showed up because that was your identity, but definitely not your decision. I remember coming home and my bedroom had been converted into someone else's safe space. A relative was coming to stay for 2 days. That turned to 9 months. No questions asked, no complaints permitted. You just adjusted. That's how early it starts for some of us. The understanding that your needs are secondary to the collective, that your season does not matter because everyone else's season takes precedence. So when your own hard season finally comes, because it will, you don't know how to name it. You don't know how to say you need your room now because nobody ever told you that was allowed. We were taught to pour, but nobody ever taught us how to refill. For so long, we have confused showing up with being present. We learn deeply that the cost of community is at constant inconvenience, and we keep paying that cost on fumes. So, let me ask you something. Have you ever shown up for someone when every part of you was screaming not to? When you were running on nothing but not wanting to disappoint them? This, friends, is people pleasing, dressed up as loyalty. And a lot of us have been doing it our whole lives. What we didn't know then, what takes years to understand, is that showing up that way doesn't always make you a good friend. It makes you a depleted one, stuck in a season you were unable to name because you didn't have the language for it just yet. And then many of us, like me, become parents, become carers. We step into seasons that ask everything of us, quietly and completely. And everybody talks about what those seasons give you: the love, the joy, the purpose, the new version of yourself that emerges. But nobody talks about the gap. You know the gap between who you were before and who you're still trying to be. The gap between the friend you promised to always show up as and the woman who is now running on 3 hours of sleep, carrying expectations that didn't shrink just because her life got bigger. All this while knowing the life being celebrated was currently in trouble, while battling the dark waters of postpartum depression that nobody around you could see. And you were standing there in your beautiful dress, smiling, because that is what we do. That is what we've always done. We show up, we pour, we pretend, and we smile. And somewhere in the middle of all of that, the career, the baby, the fading relationships, you start to lose yourself. And then you go quiet. Not intentionally. You didn't decide to become unavailable one day, you just had nothing left. So when friends called, you didn't pick up. Messages came, you read them, and you couldn't find the words. Birthdays, well, you missed those. So many moments lapsed. And then you realize the memory of joy slowly starts to fade in this season. And you hear the voice in your head that tells you you're a bad friend. You're letting everybody down. You're failing the people who love you. And most of us have believed this voice longer than we should have, until someone asks a question that changes everything. What season are you in right now? Not an accusation, not a guilt trip. Curiosity about someone's capacity rather than a demand for it. You may not have the language for that just yet, but something in you shifts. Nobody's ever asked us that before. What season are you in? Not, why aren't you showing up? Not, I feel like you're being distant. Not, are we even still friends? And not the two words that hold so much weight. Hey, stranger. You've probably received that message. You've probably sent that message. And underneath the casualness of it all, we know exactly what we're saying. I noticed your absence. I'm keeping score. Where have you been? But what if we retire that phrase entirely? What if instead we said, I see you're in something. I'm not going anywhere. Just that. Because that is the real question worth asking. Not, are you a bad friend? Because honestly, I don't think most of us are. But are you in a difficult season you haven't been permitted to name? So why do we look at a quiet friend, a distant friend, an unavailable friend, and immediately conclude, bad friend? What if we asked a different question entirely? What if instead of, why aren't you showing up, we ask, what are you carrying right now? What if instead of, she's changed. We asked, what season is she in right now? So, let me name the seasons. Because I believe a thing named is a thing that no longer has power over you. There are building seasons, where every ounce of energy is going into creating something new, a new life, a new business, a new version of yourself that doesn't exist yet. You're not unavailable because you don't care. You're unavailable because you're becoming, and becoming takes everything from you. And then there are grief seasons, where you are underwater, where just getting through the day takes everything. You can't pour in that season, because you're the one that needs pouring into, and nobody ever told you that was allowed. And then there's the survival season, where you are fighting a battle nobody around you can see. Still, somehow showing up to work on Monday morning because the lights need to stay on. Still sending those messages, still smiling. You're not a bad friend in that season. You're a fighter, and you're barely breathing. And then this is my personal favorite season. There's the integration season, where you are slowly, finally, putting yourself back together again. Learning for the first time to love yourself. Not because you stopped loving people, but because you started loving yourself. And we move through all of these seasons, sometimes simultaneously, and we call ourselves bad friends the entire time. What season are you in right now? What season are you in right now? Because in our community, we were never taught that we could have seasons. We were only ever taught to apologize for them. And for me, the friendships that last our hardest, toughest seasons, they're the friendships that are built on not constantly being available. They are built on finally being able to tell the truth. So, I want to leave you with something practical, because I believe a thing named. Because I believe communicating your seasons is one thing, but telling the people you love, now that's the harder part. Nobody teaches us that language. Nobody tells us this is how you tell the people you love you're currently unavailable without them feeling abandoned. Nobody tells us this is how you tell the people you love you're in a difficult season without them feeling like a burden. So, let me give you some words. If you're the one that is in the season, try this. I love you. I'm not available right now. This season is asking everything of me. It's not about you, and I hope you can understand. Or simply, the one I use with most of my friends, I'm regulating right now. I haven't left. I'm just trying to find my way back to me. But if you're the one on the other side, try this. I see you're in something hard right now. I'm not going anywhere. No guilt, no shame, no ultimatum, just that. Because the goal of friendship was never perfect attendance. Because nature doesn't apologize for its seasons. Winter doesn't apologize for not being summer. A tree doesn't apologize for losing its leaves. We don't look at a tree in winter and say, what a bad tree. We say, it is winter, it will bloom again. Because when the season changes, and it will change, it always does, you are still safe, still chosen, and still there. I was 9 years old, standing in a school corridor, holding chocolates I never got to give. I was 9 years old, in a school corridor, holding chocolates I never got to give. I spent years after that convinced I was the girl who didn't show up. A lot of us are still carrying that chocolate. The apology for going quiet, the guilt for not being there, the failure for a season that asked more than you had to give, and it's time to put it down. You're not a bad friend. You're just in a difficult season. You have to learn to name it. You have to learn to communicate it. But you also have to trust that the friendships you've built to last, they will. Thank you.